Good evening, I'm Ces Orenia Drilon.
And I'm Sean Yao.
The big stories tonight. President Marcos's fourth address to the nation focused more on people's needs and subtle jabs against corruption. But are these enough to produce more significant results in his governance and improving the lives of the people in the second half of his term?
Senator Francis Escudero and later Representative Martin Romualdez keep their leaderships of the Senate and lower house respectively. But the re-election seems to have triggered a reshuffling of political alignments in both houses. And will the Senate as an impeachment court push through with the trial of Vice President Sara Duterte despite the Supreme Court ruling the complaint unconstitutional? The lower house is set to file a motion for reconsideration on this ruling. We'll be speaking with House spokesperson Attorney Princess Abante later on.
Mahiya naman kayo sa inyong kapwa Pilipino. Mahiya naman kayo sa mga kabahayan nating naanod o nalubog sa mga pagbaha. Mahiya naman kayo lalo sa mga anak natin na magmamana sa mga utang na ginawa ninyo na binulsan nyo lang ang pera.
President Bongbong Marcos's fourth State of the Nation address focused on gut issues with a little bit of politics. He began with realizations from the recently concluded midterm polls.
Makasaysayan ang katatapos na halalan nitong Mayo. Kaya pinaparating ko ang aking buong pusong pagpupugay sa ating mga kababayan, lalo na sa mga kabataang botante. Sa atin lahat dito, isang tabi na natin ang ating pagkakaiba at magkasundo na sa tatlong bagay na nagbibigkis sa atin. Sa ating pagiging Pilipino, ang ating pagiging makabansa, at ang ating sinumpang tungkulin sa taong bayan. Malinaw sa akin ang mensahe ng naging resulta ng halalan. Bigo at dismayado ang mga tao sa pamahalaan, lalo na sa mga pangunahing serbisyo. Ang leksyon sa atin ay simple lamang. Kailangan pa natin mas lalong galingan. Kailangan pa natin mas lalong bilisan.
He followed through with his achievements and plans for the agricultural sector, the highlight of which is that his campaign promise of 20 pesos per kilo rice will finally be available nationwide.
Sa mga nagtatanong kung nasa na ang 20 pesos na bigas, ito ang aking tugon. Napatunayan na natin na kaya na natin ang 20 pesos sa bawat kilo ng bigas nang hindi malulugi ang ating mga magsasaka. Kamakailan lamang ay matagumpay nating nailunsad ito sa Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao, kagaya sa San Juan, Pangasinan, Cavite, Occidental Mindoro, sa Cebu, sa Bacolod, sa Guimaras, Siquijor, Davao del Sur. At dahil sa ilalaan nating 113 bilyong piso upang palakasin ang mga programa ng DA, ilulunsad na natin ito sa buong bansa sa pamamagitan ng daan-daang kadiwa store at center sa iba't ibang lokal ng pamahalaan. Binabalaan ko ang mga trader na magtatangkang magmanipula ng presyo ng palay o ng bigas o manloloko ng mga magsasaka. Hahabulin namin kayo dahil ang trato namin sa inyong ginagawa ay tinuturing naming economic sabotage.
The president also zeroed in on problems in the energy sector, recounting issues he discovered in Siquijor that led to the massive brownout in the province this year, such as neglected generators and systems in general. He also pointed out water service problems, vowing punishment for those who failed to deliver.
Marami kaming natatanggap na reklamo na hindi man lang daw umaabot ang tubig sa kanilang mga gripo. Sa lawak ng reklamo, lampas 6 na milyong consumer sa buong bansa ang kasalukuyang naapektuhan. Titiyakin natin mapapanagot ang mga nagpabaya at nagkulang sa mahalagang serbisyong publiko na ito.
The president also had a lot to say on education, which he said would be his main program for the remainder of his term. He said the administration will focus on the mental health of students and for teachers, start paying them for overload and overtime work. The president likewise mentioned laptops bought by the government for public schools.
Nagdaratingan na ang mga laptop na laan para sa bawat guro sa public school. Tiniyak natin na walang anomalya sa pagbili ng mga laptop na ito. Nakahanda na ang mga high-tech at digital na mga materyales, mga smart TV, libreng Wi-Fi at libreng load sa bayanihan SIM card. Dahil dito, handa na rin ang ating mga estudyante para makasabay sa makabagong paraan ng pag-aaral sa makabagong mundo.
The chief executive also highlighted plans to keep Filipinos fit, such as opening track and field ovals of the Philippine Sports Commission to the public. He also mentioned some notable athletes, including one who was recently declared champion in Rizal, which elicited laughter from the crowd.
Sumusunod sila sa yapak ng ating mga kampyon at world-class na athlete tulad ni Senator Manny Pacquiao, ni Heidelin Diaz, ni Kaloy Yulo. Sama na rin natin yung bago nating kampyon, si PNP Chief Nick Torres.
The president also mentioned the administration's programs to address the country's transportation problems, but it is his statement on license plates that drew applause.
Sa LTO, alam kong tapos nyo ang paghahabol sa paggawa ng mga plaka ng motor na nabinbin mula pa noong 2014. 11 taon. Mula ngayon, gawin ninyo ang lahat na makakaya upang hindi na uli magkaroon ng backlog sa plaka. Dahil kailangan bumawi sa publiko, tiyakin din ninyo na may lalabas na ang rehistro at ang plaka ng bagong sasakyan sa loob ng naipangako ninyong 3 araw.
PBBM also zeroed in on the admin's priorities in terms of peace and order, one of which is the case of the missing sabongeros.
Hahabulin at pananagutin natin ang mga utak at mga sangkot, civilian man o opisyal. Kahit malakas, mabigat o mayaman, hindi sila mangingibabaw sa batas. Higit sa lahat, ipararamdam natin sa mga salarin ang bigat ng parusa sa karumal-dumal na krimen ng mga ito.
Meanwhile, the president received a standing ovation for his statement on the recent floodings, which he blamed on officials who allegedly benefited from flood control projects.
Mahiya naman kayo sa inyong kapwa Pilipino. Mahiya naman kayo sa mga kabahayan nating naanod o nalubog sa mga pagbaha. Mahiya naman kayo, lalo sa mga anak natin na magmamana sa mga utang na ginawa ninyo na binulsan nyo lang ang pera.
The president ended his speech with a message to Congress that he will be firm in not approving a budget that is not aligned with the National Expenditure Program.
I will return any proposed general appropriations bill that is not fully aligned with the National Expenditure Program. And further, I am willing to do this even if we end up with a reenacted budget.
Meantime, lawmakers also shared their takeaways on President Bongbong Marcos's State of the Nation address. Pauline Versosa reports to us live from Batasang Pambansa. Pauline, what do you have for us?
Hi, Ses. Yes, we're still here at the north wing of the Batasang Pambansa complex in Quezon City. It's been quite the eventful day, highlighted by the fourth State of the Nation address of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Now, following his speech, which lasted for about an hour and 11 minutes, there were a lot of mixed reactions, especially from those who attended his SONA personally here in the Batasan. We got to speak to some members of Congress post-SONA, among them first-time legislator, Akbayan Party List Representative Attorney Shel Diokno. He told us that the president made some good points in his SONA earlier, especially when he touched on flood control, also on issues on water service agreements and transparency with the budget. But for Attorney Shel, he said the president did miss on some opportunities, particularly in education. Sabi niya, medyo bitin, because marami pa raw sanang gusto marinig ang kabataan. He said that while the president did tackle infrastructure like building more classrooms, providing laptops and free Wi-Fi in public schools, he didn't really answer how to solve the education crisis that the Philippines is facing right now. As we all know, there was that recent survey that showed that about 90 million Filipinos are functionally illiterate. Ibig sabihin, they can read and write, but they can't really comprehend complex ideas. So that's something that for Attorney Shel Diokno was a missed opportunity for the president. We also got to speak to Senator Risa Ontiveros, and just like Attorney Shel, she said that President Marcos did make some good points, one of them being his determination to hold corrupt officials accountable, especially when it comes to flood control. But Senator Ontiveros also expressed some apprehension, especially when President Marcos announced that he will be returning any proposed GAA bill that does not align with the government's national expenditure program, even if that means having a reenacted budget next year. And here's what Senator Ontiveros also had to say about that.
I don't think it's executive overreach yet. Kasi tingin ko nag-assert lang siya na dapat yung ipoproduce na General Appropriations Bill ng legislature ay somehow aligned sa National Expenditure Program ng executive. Pero gaya ng nabanggit ko kanina, baka magiging overreach kung i-insist na the only way forward is a reenacted budget. Dahil hindi naman. Pwedeng kung ibabalik niya sa amin, pwede pa rin naming iwasto yan or punuin kung may gaps.
Now, says earlier today also marked the opening of the 20th Congress, with both chambers holding its inaugural session, and no surprises there. It was a landslide win for Senator Cheese Escudero, who is retaining the Senate presidency after he got 19 votes, while Senator Tito Soto received 5 and will thus serve as the minority leader. Senator Jinggoy Estrada also retained his position as Senate President pro tempore, while Senator Joel Villanueva was appointed the new majority leader and chairman of the Senate Committee on Rules. We also got to catch up with Senator Joel Villanueva before the SONA, and here's what he shared with us.
Bumatikos, maraming kritiko, but he retained his composure, his brilliance of being a lawyer, a legal luminary, but at the same time being very respectful. But at the end of the day, after the Supreme Court's decision, I think it shows na tama ang Senado, ang direksyon ng Senado, hindi nagmadali, hindi inupuan, bagkos ito mismo yung the same path na pinuntahan ng SC.
Says that was Senator Joel Villanueva talking about the advantage of Senator Cheese Escudero retaining the Senate presidency. He said it just goes to show that he has what it takes to lead the Senate. Meanwhile, over at the House of Representatives, late 1st District Representative Martin Romualdez also retained the House speakership with 269 votes, and he also won uncontested. Now, before the SONA earlier, we got to speak to presidential son Ilocos Norte 1st District Representative Sandro Marcos, who was also elected majority leader, and he talked about why it's also advantageous for the House for Speaker Martin Romualdez to retain the speakership.
I think I'm well prepared enough for the job. Pero dagdag trabaho talaga yan. I mean, the job of majority leader is it's a thankless job, and it's a lot of late nights and a lot of work. But sa tingin ko handa naman po tayo.
Right, says, well, it's already been about 2 hours since the State of the Nation address of President Bongbong Marcos. Many promises were made solutions were provided, answers were provided, but of course the question on every Filipino's minds is, will these promises come to fruition in the last 3 years of Marcos's administration? Here at the Batasang Pambansa complex, people are already starting to leave. And as mentioned, this year's SONA was quite subdued. They didn't roll out the red carpet because they wanted to be in tune or attuned to the realities that many Filipinos were facing. So there wasn't any of that pomp and pageantry that is typically associated when it comes to the SONA. Ses?
Pawi, what about things that were unsaid in the President's SONA? For instance, there was no reference to the ICC, former President Duterte being there, or the impeachment, for instance. What did the lawmakers have to say? Were they looking for references to these issues?
Well, you're right, Seth. Let me just add to some of the things also that the president did not discuss, and that's online gambling. A lot of people were expecting him to give out a pronouncement or a more firm announcement on online gambling, because last year he did give that a surprising ban on pogos, but this time around he didn't really announce anything when it comes to that. But when it comes to impeachment, yes, wala nga rin siya sa SONA ni Pangulong Marcos. But of course, here in the sidelines, lawmakers were asked about it, particularly Attorney Shell Diokno. And here's what he had to say about the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte and the recent ruling of the Supreme Court calling it unconstitutional.
On the one hand, may kapangyarihan ang Supreme Court na maging check sa grave abuse of discretion. Klarong-klaro yan sa ating konstitusyon. On the other hand, meron din kapangyarihan ang Senate bilang impeachment court na meron silang sole power to try and decide impeachment cases. Ang tanong, pwede bang pumasok ang Supreme Court when the impeachment court under the Constitution has the sole power to try and decide impeachment cases? So that is an issue that has never happened in our legal history. Kaya hindi natin alam kung paano ma-resolve yan.
Now, Seth, we also got to ask some senators about it. Senator Risa Ontiveros did say the ball is now with the Senate, being the legislature. Sabi niya, the Senate still does have that exclusive sole power to try and decide. So sila daw sa minority bloc, they're really thinking hard on the best way forward so that they can perform their responsibilities under the Constitution to proceed forthwith with this impeachment trial. But on the other hand, Senator Joel Villanueva told us earlier that for them, they want to respect the decision of the Supreme Court. They said they will be having a caucus tomorrow, but it won't be their priority in their agenda tomorrow. They will be tackling priority measures instead and the subcommittee chairmanships. Sabi niya yung impeachment daw, baka nasa 4th or 5th na yan sa kanilang priority tomorrow, says.
Thank you. That's our fellow anchor here on The Big Story, Pauline Versosa.
We're just going to pause for a quick break, but still to come. The House of Representatives is set to ask the Supreme Court to reconsider its decision on the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte. We'll be discussing this with House spokesperson, Attorney Princess Abante. Keep it here.
You're watching the big story here on One News. With senators divided on the ruling and the House pushing back as it plans to seek reconsideration, joining us now is House spokesperson Attorney Princess Abante to weigh in. Welcome to the big story.
Good evening.
Well, when will you be filing this motion for reconsideration with the Supreme Court?
Well, on when we will be filing, I will have to check with the House of Representatives Council, the Office of the Solicitor General. I think we have 15 days from receipt of the decision to file the motion for reconsideration. So the actual date of the filing, I will have to check.
And this has the unanimous decision of the House prosecution panel.
From what I understand, yes. Upon reading the decision and checking the facts, factual basis of the Supreme Court of its decision, there is a clear need to file a motion for reconsideration to clarify to the court the factual erroneous factual details that they relied on in getting to the decision, and hopefully with the motion for reconsideration stating the correct timeline and asserting that the House of Representatives, in acting on the impeachment complaints, acted based on the rules prevailing under the Constitution and jurisprudence at the time that the impeachment complaint were transmitted. So we're hoping that with the motion for reconsideration, the Supreme Court would see the wisdom of the House of Representatives Act in the impeachment proceedings, and we would have a different outcome from this step.
Attorney Abante, does the House prosecution panel feel that perhaps the Supreme Court, did not appreciate properly certain facts in your submission?
In the statement that we released, we mentioned that the Supreme Court relied on news articles instead of the official documents that were submitted before the court. That's why there's a need to file a motion for reconsideration to clarify these facts based on records of the House of Representatives, so that the Supreme Court would see how the House acted, and that it acted based on the Constitution, the rules of the House, and prevailing jurisprudence, also decided by the Supreme Court in Francisco and the Gutierrez case.
Okay. Are you hopeful, though, that the Supreme Court will grant the MR, given that it was a unanimous vote? A lot of luminaries are saying it's not worth the effort. So if hindi siya matuloy, what is the proclivity of the House? Just file again in 2026?
Well, of course, we will always remain hopeful. We respect the decision of the Supreme Court, but we are allowed to file our motion for reconsideration, and the House of Representatives decided to take that opportunity to correct some factual issues that we found in the decision. If the Supreme Court would still affirm their previous decision, it will now be up to the members of the House of Representatives on the next step that it would take.
Now, Attorney, what do you or the prosecution panel think? Should the Senate push through with the impeachment trial?
On the action of the Senate, it's really up to them. Definitely, the Constitution states that it's the Senate's mandate to act on the impeachment articles of impeachment forthwith. So it would be up to the Senate on how they will act on it, even with the Supreme Court's decisions. Particularly, it is not yet final.
And Attorney, while you file the motion for reconsideration, what is the House prosecution panel going to do? Are you going to hit pause? Are you going to rejig the cast of characters in the panel to add, Congresswoman De Lima and Congressman Chel Diokno?
On adding new members of the panel of prosecutors, we will have to wait for the plenary on how they will act on it. But definitely, even before and until now, the panel of prosecutors remain prepared for any time that the impeachment trial would proceed to present its evidence.
All right, well, we do thank you so much, Attorney Princess Abante, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
And now, from Attorney Abante, we move on to the President's SONA. We circle back to the President's SONA. And joining us tonight to weigh in is political analyst Robin Garcia. Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story. Thank you for coming to the studio.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here finally to meet everyone.
So, what's your immediate takeaway from the speech?
I have a lot of thoughts. Actually, I thought that it was impactful. I thought it was quite timely. There are some issues that, currently is part of the news cycle that he did talk about. For example, the typhoon. I think that was quite clever. PhilHealth issue was still quite recent, and that he did address that squarely. And I thought that overall the SONA focused on policy and programs. It focused on economics. But he tried to mix that with sort of this social and human aspect to economics, which is actually quite difficult. If you talk about economics and industry, it could be highfalutin. You could talk about numbers and things like that. But he tried his best to humanize it, to make it more social, to make it more grounded. Of course,
I think the president has been trying to demonstrate empathy with people. But then, well, it's one thing to express empathy, but it really is up to him to make it easier for all of us, right?
Before you answer, Robin, I'll just add on to what Seth said, because a lot of pundits have said this is quite populist, this fourth SONA, compared to the first three. First of all, he spoke in Filipino, not English, as his norm. He's not, of course, the first to do that, but first for PBBM. Do you agree with that? And what do you think? Was that a good move?
I mean, in some respects, it's populist, but I don't think it's squarely a populist speech. He did talk about people. That doesn't make it populist right away. When you say populism, it would require the president painting an enemy and that he is the savior. In fact, that was absent in the speech. Last year, he talked about China. He talked about pogos. And then he did talk about businessmen. But I think this year he focused on domestic social issues instead of foreign policy issues. So I mean there are elements of populism, but I don't think it's completely populist. But it's absolutely a good move to make it a people-centered speech, because that's what he lacks. And I think the approval ratings that he's had the past few months reflect that, right? So. And he did say that, address the issue of the elections, that it is a referendum on his ability to, to be more responsive to people's needs, and that's what he did. I think that's what he was trying to do this afternoon.
What about Mrs.?
A lot. I think he could have improved. So while he was trying to be more social, more human, some SONAs, if you remember, they actually talk about actual people. They even asked those people to stand in the gallery, right? So that was not there, right? So I think that he could have improved in that sense. Like people who were actual beneficiaries of programs that he erected, right? The departments, that was not there. Second, he did not talk about Bagong Pilipinas. And I think
Yes, I wanted to point that out. You said,
the other
should
night.
it be just a logo and and a jingle?
A jingle and even a panunumpa, right?
Yeah.
It's a logo that you put in the paper. But I was waiting for sort of that explanation for how do you define the parameters of Bagong Pilipinas? What does it really mean, right?
Well, he did say in the ending.
Do you think
Bagong Pilipino tayo.
it's just a twist. But if we're gonna compare, right? So I think the last admin, they were super strict about their 10-point socioeconomic agenda, to the point I still remember it up to now. And it would seem to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this admin doesn't have that kind of backbone or framework that they will...
Or like plan. That
You're absolutely right. I think Bagong Pilipinas is still a very abstract and very far sort of political slogan and concept. that has yet to be brought down. So this year, if he's going to focus on social welfare, giving free stuff in terms of health, he has to say that, right? So he has to say that health is one of his, the cornerstone of Bagong Pilipinas. And he has to define why it's new and what is old, right? So things like that, right? So he has to make us imagine, build a narrative.
And also so that we can measure his performance against the
Against
plan.
what he said, correct.
Although
usually
there's
how we
a
do it.
Correct.
5-year Philippine development plan isn't there.
There's always a Philippine development plan, right?
Yeah.
But
By
again,
the NEDA.
I hate to do this and compare to the last admin, but the
No,
last
this admin.
Okay, because the previous admins, they would have multi-sectoral, stakeholder, like 2-day conferences
Correct.
on PDP.
Correct. And I think what's absent also this year is that he never talked about any solid legislation. Like no RA
Well,
like this or
the
no
budget.
House bill, except
wait,
for that.
But the budget, let's
Usually they talk about numbers, they talk about actual legislation. And, you know, SONA, you need to talk to, the audiences are both the legislators and the people. But actually he was talking to the people instead of legislators and telling them, okay, these are my legislative priorities.
Well, he said, mahiya naman kayo.
Yes, that's true, but that was a more general sort of statement. But yeah,
When he was talking about water and the camera focused on Cynthia Villar, or was it Camille Villar?
It was Camille.
Camille, what did you make of that?
you know what? I think this is a very political. I think we're getting into the more political stuff. I think obviously the Villars are now not squarely in the Duterte camp, but they've traversed the Duterte camp already. They've endorsed Sara Duterte endorsed Camille Villar and things like that, right? So we've seen that unfold the last few months, and so I think it's beginning to look like the president, President Marcos, is sort of drawing the line between himself, the regime, his administration, and the Villars who remain
Camera cut
powerful.
away. Couldn't he have mentioned them?
Baka sinadya yun.
Yung prime water was already mentioned by
Some legislators, correct.
and
this
Attorney
morning.
Claire Castro has during the campaign period. So
And even yung may Lua report na, nasa table na raw ni Presidente, but we haven't heard the follow-up for that.
or apparently the Siquijor
The
power
outage.
plant is also owned by a company of the Villars.
Yeah, so the Villars remain to be, very, very popular. They're still at the head of the NP, Nacionalista Party, which is one of the oldest, most influential parties. And so you see that sort of business elites and the political alignments in play, especially with the Villars.
I wanted to get your thoughts and circling back to what he said about the 2026 GAA or budget, where he said he kind of threatened with reenactment, right?
Yeah.
Personally, I wanted to hear something about open
Yeah.
bycam, since we've been talking about
Yeah.
this nonstop, and some legislators have said, do you think it would be a good idea, low-hanging fruit, to just say, look,
Yeah.
that's my priority legislation?
I actually kind of felt that this speech was, it was a very paternalistic speech in the sense that he was giving free stuff. He was also exerting the power. Yeah, free stuff, like health,
Everyone likes free
for
stuff.
heart, for cancer, for dialysis, things like that.
etc. Yeah.
So, that's
Pero-
part of a bigger goal, I think, for him, which is to exert the power of the government, the power of the state. And I think that was one of the impactful moments in the speech, in fact. But that's also cast the backdrop that he's being accused of being a lame duck president. Na wala naman parang he's just waiting to be for the next 2028 election. He's just riding along and just cruise and chill, right? But this speech, he was trying to send a message that I'm still here. The government is still here. I'm still leading the government, and there are things that I want to get done. So he's putting his name back in sort of the issue of governance and politics. So I think that's what I got from what he was trying to do. And specifically for the budget, there's this sort of perception that he was hands off in terms of budget.
Just letting
Letting the
things
legislators,
be, yeah.
sort of figure it out. I think he's trying to micromanage that part of the governance process, and he made it a cornerstone of his administration. We'll see if there will be improvements in the budget in 2026.
That's a long list of free stuff he promised. Huh?
It was like 30 minutes of free stuff, like being
Magkano
Correct,
yun?
in health.
Diba? How much is that?
That's a
going
lot.
to,
That's a lot.
he has to fund all that.
Yeah, I'm also wondering actually how
Well,
he will fund that.
yeah.
He said that GDP is good. That reflects the earnings of the government. If it's not corrupted, then we'll have something to spend. But I hope he addresses corruption really, so that he will have more public spending in social welfare.
So you think he connected with the Filipino
I think he did connect.
public?
I think it was quite impactful. Last year was impactful, but he was speaking to more political issues. Right now, it's more people-centered.
Do you think that was conscious? Because politics right now has gotten, it's on a whole new level, right? We didn't hear anything about Rodrigo Duterte and the
Yeah.
ICC. We didn't hear about the West Philippine Sea even, which
Correct.
people like,
Yeah.
he polled well on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then PIGOs, online gambling, impeachment, nothing.
Yeah, there's certain things that you didn't discuss. Actually, I was waiting for the West Philippine Sea. It's one of my favorite
Yeah.
topics. Pero baka sayad na kasi sinabi na niya nung first, second, and third SONA. Parang
Bakit sayad
baka
na
ayaw
yun?
niyang
It's,
gamitin niya. Well, siguro
And
to
he's
them.
supported there, right?
Yeah.
By the
Yeah.
populace.
Or let's say, ano na lang, I don't know.
But did you notice he turned a bit emotional when he was talking about the good traits of the Filipino? Parang his voice caught a little bit, or was that just my imagination?
I'm not sure
Ano
because
ba? Okay.
I don't know. I thought he was, wala siyang water. I wasn't very conscious about that. Medyo mahaba yun. So
Parang
maybe-
naubusan na lang siguro kasi
Baka.
ending na. Kasi parang when he was praising, what's good about the Filipino, di ba?
I mean, for me, he usually is very good when he's, reading speeches, and I'm assuming he's reading them. How would you say he translated, and did you notice any different nuances? Like, I noticed darker lighting, of course, the Filipino language.
Well, I mean, there were some bumps in the speech, right? I mean, he could have enunciated some words better. But I think overall he connected when majority of the speech was in Tagalog. No? So maganda naman yung tone. Yung structure, actually, palagay ko maganda rin yung pagka-structure.
Madali mag-notes.
Parang conversation. Medyo, yeah.
Oo, di ba?
Easy.
Parang, tsaka organized siya.
Hindi yung malalim na hindi mo maintindihan.
Highfalutin, puro
yung mga
terms.
Tagalog words, Filipino
Totoo.
words rather. But
Yeah.
he's also skipped this. There was another important omission, or, well, you tell me if it's important or not. He didn't report on his U.S. trip, on, the tariffs, our number one market.
And so actually, that's why I think that he was trying to get away from this whole anti-China narrative. Because people will then say, "Oy, yung kaibigan mo naman, hindi ka binigyan ng maraming concessions eh." So actually, yung foreign policy mo, wala ka masyadong achievements.
Do you
And
think
people were expecting that a few days
That's
ago,
why he
right?
skipped that.
I think that's why he skipped that, because there was nothing to report in terms of foreign policy, in fact.
He just said, parang we remain independent. Yun lang yung sinabi niya di ba? And do you think, though, that toning down the anti-China rhetoric was a cue from President Trump? Because in their meeting, that kind of screamed at me.
I think he was trying to say that he's also not happy with what he got from the United States in terms of tariffs, because tariffs is a big thing, especially for our budding economic success.
But we're trying to form a coalition of nations supporting us in asserting our sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea. I mean, there's Japan, there's the EU,
Yeah.
there's France,
Yeah.
Australia.
Yeah, you remember in his
So,
first SONA,
That's not but something significant to.
mukhang bumalik siya dun sa first SONA niya na enemy to none and friends to all. And then nung second and third, parang mas naging defined yung anti-China stance niya. Parang ngayon bumalik siya doon so it's maybe it probably is because of the U.S. trip and the lack of. It was the first meeting. It's quite significant. But he did talk about the ASEAN chairmanship, although he did not outline what he would want to do. We'll see if the West Philippine Sea will be part
And
of
he
the
did
agenda.
say the Philippines is now respected and recognized internationally, but he didn't elaborate.
Correct. I was also wondering what that is.
Yeah.
Ano kaya yung thought process? Do you think by avoiding these things that we were all very eagerly awaiting, just serve to call more attention to the lack of anything on these specific topics?
Yeah, maybe he wants to really carve out more space for more social stuff, more domestic stuff instead of foreign policy stuff. Kasi malayo pa rin kasi talaga yan. It's not an election issue as much as we want it to be. And
Hindi siya gut issue.
Hindi siya gut issue, correct. No? So if at the beginning of his speech he's saying that narinig ko yung parang yung gusto niyong sabihin dun sa resulta ng election, that's why he's responding directly to the results of the elections, which is mainly
It was almost
economics.
like a conversational speech, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very easy to digest.
Yeah. So for a midterm SONA,
Grading na ba?
grade. Professor ka naman, di ba?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm a faculty at the Ateneo School of Government.
Anong grade?
Okay, 1 to 10.
Parang kung 10 pinakamataas, parang nasa 6.5 pa siya.
Barely passing.
That's low! Akala ko ba you liked it?
I'm very generous. I'm a tough prof. Kaya that's why.
Mag-ingat na yung mga
Parang
estudyante.
medyo pasang-awa ata yung
Oo, 6.5, 7, ganyan.
7 yung pasang-awa sa amin dati, di ba? So barely
Yeah.
passing.
Kasi yung expectation is dapat, ando ka na sa legacy building eh. What is your legacy? Like,
Parang
I'm
wala pa
not
siyang
really sure.
pwedeng maipagmamalaki.
He's reactive to the call of the times, which is not bad. But what else are you going to do? What defines, why are you strong? Why are you bold? Right? Why is your administration not what your opponents are saying, which is that you're a lame duck, you're weak, diba? So underwhelming, correct. That's actually the right term.
Well-intentioned, but underwhelming.
Okay, and a lot has been said. Last question from Robin. A lot has been said about the president's communication skills, or even this admin's communication skills, or lack thereof. How would you say this SONA shifts that, if at all?
I don't think there was a big improvement, to be honest. They're institutionally, they're scrambling for the right person to put at the PCO or as their communications chief.
They have a new one.
Yeah, I mean, but it does the fact that they've been changing. It does reflect that they have a shallow bench, meaning that they don't have a lot of people they could trust who could execute very well. There are a lot of very good journalists actually who might be able to do a better job, but I don't know why they haven't spoken to them, or maybe those journalists did not accept the invitation. Who knows, right? But I think they could do a better job in communicating, in framing and shaping narratives and perceptions about the strength of the administration. And it's not just about, talking directly to the Dutertes, right? And trying to rebut them. That's not the task of the palace, right? I mean, in that sense, baka yun kaya ng tapatan nung spokesperson, but there are other things that you need to think about, and that's basically your developmental legacy, and the strength of your political leadership, which I think he could have also done in this SONA, but he did not, and that's why he had to talk about Bagong Pilipinas. That was, to me, an opportunity that maybe he could take in the next State of the Nation address.
Okay. Well, thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
to the big
Thank you
story.
very much.
That was political analyst Robin Garcia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to be pausing for another quick break, but when we return, we have definitely more SONA-related stories for everybody. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us here on The Big Story. Senator Francis Escudero retained his position as Senate President after earning 19 votes during the opening of the 20th Congress. Former Senate President Vicente Soto III, who returned to the upper chamber after winning a fresh mandate in the May polls, was elected Senate Minority Leader with 5 votes. Let's take a look at how things went this morning with mobile journalist Merimon Reyes. So Merimon, well, 19 voted for Senator Escudero. Let's go to the 5 who make up the minority.
Yes, says Senator Tito Soto, who was also vouched by several lawmakers, only garnered 5 votes for that. So this would mean he would be leading the Senate minority, including Senators Risa Hontiveros, Senator Loren Legarda, Senator Ping Lacson, and Senator Mig Zubiri. However, Senator Risa Hontiveros is actually a different move kasi base sa lahat ng mga naging pahayag natin sa mga lumipas na linggo, sinasabi ni Senadora Risa na siya raw ay magiging independent. However, though may differences daw sa ilang mga sentimiento or pananaw si Senadora Risa dito kay Senator Tito Soto, especially when it comes to the SOGI bill and other matters, pareho naman daw ang kanilang pananaw pagdating sa check and balances. So she is excited. Actually, nakausap natin siya earlier bago sila magsialisan dito sa batasan na she is excited to work with the Senate minority, says.
Hi, Merimon, si Shonto. Ano naman nangyari dun sa mga Duterte senators or Duterte bloc na tinatawag natin? They didn't go to the SONA, including presidential sister Amy Marcos. So anong ginawa nila today?
Oo, actually silang itong Duterte bloc, kumpleto naman sila doon sa formal opening of the regular session ng Senado under the 20th Congress. Pero 2 weeks ago, sinabi na mismo ni Senator Bato de la Rosa na he will not be attending President Bongbong Marcos' State of the Nation address today dahil nga merong ilang mga kongresista raw o kaya mga tao raw sa Malacanang na ayaw niya raw makipagplastikan. Earlier, bago rin na magkaroon ng lunch break at bago rin na magsialisan sa Senado itong mga mambabatas, nasabi naman ni Senadora Amy Marcos na silang Duterte bloc, tulad naman last year, ang decision daw nila not to attend the SONA is a decision made by the bloc as a whole. Pero para sa kanya, ang nasabi niya, may ibang mga matter pa raw na kailangan bigyan ng atensyon at yung mga nilalaman ng SONA ni Pangulong Marcos, mababasa o mapapanood naman daw nila mula sa media outfits.
Merimon, ang haba ng araw mo mula sa opening ng yung inaugural session ng Senado hanggang ngayong gabi, nandyan ka sa Batasang Pambansa. Ano ba ang mga kapansin-pansin sa mga pangyayari na naiiba sa mga dati mong pag-cover ng SONA?
Sa lumipas na SONA na napuntahan natin, yung red carpet na nakagawian talaga natin dito kung saan yung mga lawmaker natin both from the House and from the Senators, from the Senate will be having a media photo opportunity gracing their entries or their fashionable outfits. Ngayong araw mellowed down or toned down talaga ito. Yung red carpet naging red mat lang doon sa labas nga ng Senate building and even dito sa House. Ito ang nag-serve lang, ang pinaka-purpose lang nito para matanggal yung mga putik-putik sa mga sapatos. Pero tulad dito sa likuran ko, simula kanina umaga hanggang ngayong gabi na natiling malinis at maaliwalas itong loob nga ng batasan. At even itong mga mambabatas, hindi sila masyadong nagpapaunlak talaga ng posting pagdating doon sa media photo opportunity even from the Senate. Ito ay parang maging pakikisama daw nila doon sa sunod-sunod na pagbaha dahil nga dito sa habagat at sa mga bagyo. So ito yung pinaka nakita nating pagbabago today, Ses.
Maraming salamat. Mobile Journal, Merimon Reyes.
And late, First District Representative Ferdinand Martin Romualdez also kept the speakership of the House of Representatives. His election, however, has triggered a reshuffling of political alignments in the lower chamber. Let's talk to mobile journalist Arles de los Santos, who covered the events all day at the plenary. Arles, how many voted for Speaker Romualdez? How many abstained?
Sean, ngayong araw nga ay opisyal na binuksan ang 20th Congress kung saan dinaluhan yan ng 290 House members pero may ilan na wala dyan dahil inaasahan natin na darating ang 317 na mga mambabatas. Kaya naman sa pagsisimula nito kanina ay agad ngang namili o naghalala ang mga kasama natin dito sa mababang kapulukan ng magiging House Speaker. At ayan nga, naging post si House Speaker Martin Romualdez na nagtala ng 269 votes kung saan 34 naman ang nag-abstain.
Les, usap-usapan nung una no? Dapat lalabanan nila Toby Tiangco, posibleng si Albi Benitez, at kung sino-sino pa mag-challenge kay Speaker Romualdez. Ano nagyari at bakit hindi natuloy?
Actually, Sean, kanina ay inaasahan din natin ang pagsulpot ng mga pangalan na ito dahil mula pa lang 19th Congress ay ito na mga pangalan na matunog na talagang susubok na baguhin ang liderato sa mababang kapulungan o dito sa Kamara. Pero kanina ay hindi natin nasaksihan yan at naging post nga itong si House Speaker Martin Romualdez. Actually, wala naman talagang naging pahayag si Tiangco at si Frasco na susubok nga sila na magnais na maging House Speaker. Pero syempre, dahil nga sa kanilang naging pagpuna sa liderato ni Romualdez, ay ang kanilang mga pangalan ang namutawi sa ilang mga kasama natin dito.
Nag-walk out nga ba si Congressman Paulo Duterte? Ano ba talaga nangyari?
Ang nangyari dyan, Ses, ay nang simulan ang nominasyon para sa House Speakership ay nagulat na lamang tayo na nag-walk out ang ating siguro matuturing na Duterte Black. Ayan ay sina Harold Duterte, Paulo Duterte at si Omar Duterte. Kaya naman hindi na raw sila namili at actually kahit mag-abstain ay hindi nila ginawa dahil ayon sa kanila, kay Paulo Duterte to be specific, ay ayaw daw nila makisangkot sa political circus na ngayon ay nangyayari dito sa House of Representatives at anila ay tila Game of Thrones daw ang nangyayari at tila nakakalimutan ng mga mababatas kung sino nga ba ang pinagsisilbihan ng mababang kapulungan kundi ang taong bayan daw dapat.
Speaking of Game of Thrones, Arles, nabanggit ko nga sa aking lead-in sa'yo, may reshuffling na naganap, may mga realignment. Bakit naman daw mas marami na ang minorya or minority ngayon sa lower house?
Actually, Sean, bago pa magsimula ang 20th Congress ay inaasahan na natin ang landslide win ni House Speaker Martin Romualdez dahil nagpaabot na nga ng kanilang pagsuporta ang aabot sa 291 na incoming House members bago pa magsimula ang 20th Congress. Pero medyo nagbago yan Actually, bumaba pa nga kung tutuusin dahil instead of 291 votes for Martin Romualdez ay naging 269 na lamang yan. Pero yung 34 na nag-abstain ay hindi naman daw agad yan otomatiko na magiging bahagi sila ng minority bloc. Dahil kasama dyan sila Toby Tiangco at si Frasco na nagsabi na hindi sila sasali sa minority bloc bagkus sila ay magiging o mananatiling independent kasama ng mga Duterte na inaasahan din nating magiging independent para sa 20th Congress.
Right, maraming salamat sa inyong update. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos reporting to us from the Batasang Pambansa.
And also, still related to the SONA, police maintain maximum tolerance in managing rallyists. This morning, members of Bagong Alyansa burned 2 effigies of President Bongbong Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte in front of the Department of Agrarian Reform. At Commonwealth Avenue, some groups pushed road barriers to occupy 6 of the 8 lanes of the said thoroughfare. They insisted that it's among the terms agreed upon when they requested for a permit to rally. The police just restrained them when they attempted to move beyond St. Peter's Basilica, which is 1.6 meters to Batasang Pambansa. Meanwhile, Marcos supporters donning red gathered at the area in front of the Sandigan Bayan. Some were even in costumes, but they didn't have a program nor their own screen or sound system, so they watched the SONA on their individual gadgets.
And outside of Metro Manila, protests also erupted in Davao and Cebu, echoing calls for better jobs, higher wages, and an end to corruption before Marcos's SONA. Freedom Park, carrying placards, criticizing the administration and demanding what they call real change. They slammed the Marcos administration for failing to address low wages, job insecurity, human rights violations, and corruption. Some Davaoeños also called on the president to speak on the possible return of former President Rodrigo Duterte, who is currently detained at The Hague. Meanwhile, tension flared in Cebu between police and demonstrators. This came after protesters attempted to post placards on the gate of the police regional office, prompting authorities to intervene. Led by Bayan Central Visayas, the group aired their grievances, including rising prices of goods and worsening corruption. One placard highlighted a campaign promise that they said remains unfulfilled: rice at 20 pesos per kilo. Others went further, saying that if Marcos were an employee, he would have already been terminated due to what they called repeated failures. And on that note, that's it for the big story on this Monday SONA evening. Thank you for watching. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
We'll be back here tomorrow at 7:30 as usual. See you then and have a good night, everyone.
But wait, there's more. Coming up next, we have play-by-play with Andre Felix and Cheska Liton Calao. Hi, guys. Busy day today. Yes, but I know.
Yes.
I know.
You
Alam
know.
ko yung headline nyo eh.
Ano?
Kahit na may SONA,
Nabasa mo eh.
hindi. Alam ko na kasi nasa Twitter ako buong araw, so nakita ko rin siya because it's very, very big news.
Hindi naman to siguro si General Torre winning by default, no?
Hindi. Siya nga lang yung tumayo, di ba? Hi, guys. No, nothing to do with General Torre.
Yeah.
This has something to do with pambansang sport natin, basketball. Yes.
Galing,
Updated.
galing. Oo, updated. I was just telling Cheska also, happy ako kasi, well, di ba, pwede na-announce na pwede nang tumakbo kahit hindi athlete. Kasi usually national athletes can only use like Rizal, Phil Sports Arena. So now, it's open. And I was telling Cheska, I can use the track now kasi I'm not, obviously, national athlete. But I can use
Oh,
Yes.
that's what you welcome in the speech.
Actually,
Yes.
nandun talaga sa speech yung fitness, no? Nagulat ba kayo? Na parang sabi niya, concerned siya sa fitness ng mga
Oo.
kabataan.
yes.
Ito sa random thing to
Actually,
hear.
some parts of
Sige,
the
go.
speech, parang nagkakwento si Presidente. Parang
Oo.
nakikipagkwentuhan siya sa mga kabarkada niya. Or, diba?
Very,
Did you
very
feel that?
Yes, I
connected.
felt
But
that.
we also had PSC Chairman Pato Gregorio on the show who
A few
also
weeks back.
mentioned
Few weeks back.
that this was in the works.
Yeah.
So, kumbaga, it's already niluluto na siya before the
Yes,
SONA.
yes.
Okay, so
Kumbaga,
ngayon wala nang
nilatag
attract.
lang and then off.
The term he used for it was healthy citizenry.
Yes. Nasabi niya na hindi just because you're not a national athlete, but you're a citizen of the country, you can also, kumbaga, gain, or kumbaga, have access
Okay.
to...
So when are you doing this?
Oo nga eh. Alam ko
Bukas
si
na bukas daw si Andre.
Nasa
Baka
track na
mga
ako
press
tomorrow.
release lang yan.
Si Andre magja-jogging na sa at least track oval, magaan sa tuhod, di ba?
At least hindi na sa Ortigas, sa EDSA, sa kung saan niyo ako nakikita.
Pakalat-kalat si Andre.
Abangan ko IG story mo.
Thank you once again to The Big Story. That's it for their show. What a packed show, of course, wrapping up President Bongbong Marcos's fourth State of the Nation address. But on our show, as Sean mentioned, we all have everything